Hello and welcome to Cadiz. This is Dresden's Tale, episode 29. This is a show where we follow the adventures of Dresden Fane, a dwarf, a warlock, slightly grumpy and generally happy to keep to himself. Our hero exists in the violence of the Keld culture. Don't delude yourselves with visions of shiny knights and social justice. We are telling the tale of the bad guys. I'm your guide, Lewis Nichols, and this is season 2 of our series. Today, we find our favorite bad guy in a bit of a jam. Let's join him on this fine winter's day. A few weeks have passed, and we find ourselves on Simon's 24th day. What's your relationship to Leith Shamtha? The Minotaur asked. The warrior introduced himself as Aerith, priest of Halloy, master of stone, destroyer of the unseeable eight, inquisitor of the gates. Dresden was certain he knew what that first part meant. The rest was a mystery. Aerith's wide horns and dark fur demonstrated his Taloga bloodline. The ethnicity was one of the most notable in the clans, demanding wide doorways and constant vigilance in case one turned too quickly. 4 songbirds perched on his horns, 3 on one side, and a yellow tweeter by himself on the right. Dresden cleared his throat. It's not a relationship. A chimp-like monkey waggled his finger in front of the dwarf's face. It will go much simpler if you answer with complete honesty. Now we know you've been seen with her far more than would seem prudent. She's a very influential person. Why would she make time for you? He turned to the monkey. More than prudent. I haven't seen her for weeks. I've been in the Temple of Baelus studying. You know I'm a warlock. We know what you are. Aerith made the statement sound like a violation. Now answer. He'd been summoned an hour before, and when he didn't respond immediately, a group of thug guardsmen showed up to rush him along. She's my friend's sister. She doesn't even know my name, Dresden answered. The room wasn't much to look at. Nothing adorned the walls. There was only a table and chairs with a pitcher of water in the middle of it. It was part of a sprawling building with 2 enormous trees acting as foundations, 30 feet to the ground, where a statue of the hero Byron stood in the midst of a small garden. Fine, we'll come back to that. The last member of the room snapped his fingers to regain Dresden's attention. It was the first time he'd seen a Hawkling up close. The winged species from Manelia seemed very nearly human except for the feathered appendages attached to his shoulder blades. Much smaller feathers lined his face where some humans grew sideburns. The warrior's hands were particularly bony. Dresden couldn't remember his name. What is this about? What do you think of Bereal? Aerith asked, ignoring Dresden's question. I don't know. None of them seemed to like the answer. This is going to take forever, the monkey groaned. You've never done this before, have you? Done what? Been debriefed, you idiot, the Hawkling screeched. Aerith moved his face closer to Dresden. From time to time, we interview warriors, especially those who travel. The purpose is to develop a working knowledge of those moving up the ranks of the clan. We serve as a vanguard against heretics and spies. The Hawkling made sort of a pissed-off cawing noise. Why are we explaining ourselves to the boy? Young dwarf, you spent some time in Jungo territory. Talk about that. He picked up a journal and prepared to take notes. Dresden took a deep breath. I went on a mission to check the borderlands. They all stared at him as if expecting more. It was hot. I hate debriefing dwarves, the monkey groaned. Okay, Dresden, who did you travel with? The 3 became one big mass of questions. Why so much detail was needed, he had no idea. How any of it helped guard against heretics was a mystery. But they were stronger warriors than he, and that alone gave them the right to question him. For the next 3 hours, Dresden listened to their questions and answered directly, briefly, and to the point. Apparently, this was exactly the opposite of the answers they wanted, but he had no idea how to expand. Pawpaw had been very clear that talking too much was a sign of vanity, and dwarven habits were hard to break. You realize I'm a priest of Halloy? Aerith asked. It seemed like they were starting to get tired, but once Dresden settled into a rhythm, he started to enjoy himself. He was serving the clan, and he didn't have to unload a boat to do it. Even better, the questions were far less mentally taxing than studying the theories of Ziblich. Yeah, I saw the birds. He thought the Minotaur was going to strike him for a moment. You would be doing your associates a favor by answering more completely. How do you think playwrights know what heroes to venerate? I love the theater, Dresden volunteered. Not the new stuff. Most of it seems too full of exposition. I'd say my top 5 are all from my pawpaw's time. Middle to early last century, around the rise of the Howells. A lot of great dramas from back in the day. Enough! Aerith shouted. His companions were laughing at him. The monkey forced himself to seriousness. Shall we continue? Sure. Dresden was beginning to worry. They were going to report him back to Master Nanok for being uncooperative. I'm doing my best. That's what worries us, the Hawkling said dryly. Tell us about the warriors you traveled with last summer. You mentioned a Karen? Human woman, a Pat. She has curly hair and she likes to braid it. A birthmark on her neck. It's kind of... Aerith put up his hand. We know what she looks like. Oh, you do? Dresden grunted. What did you want to know, then? Did she say ruck? He nodded. The short prayers were a staple of day-to-day observances to the gods. Did she lead? The Minotaur stretched out the question, as if expecting him to add more detail. Dresden shook his head in the negative. Donald did. He's a priest of Rhenia, but it really seemed like he always versed with the Tianist gods, so what Ralph and I did was... What are you writing? For the first time in hours, the Hawkling seemed interested. Just go on. What did Ralph and you do? Well, we led verse for the Krieganist gods. That's all. Aerith chuckled, but didn't seem very merry about it. Dwarves didn't laugh much, and Dresden never quite figured out what the different ways to do it all meant. Would you call Ralph a friend? Yes. Even though he's a partisan? Dresden shrugged. He's still a warrior. He actually joined a house and the militia, you know. Yeah, we know. So do you guys have anything to do with the camps? I should tell you about a girl named Demi. Very hard worker. Will there be dinner? No, Aerith told him. What about Liz? Oh, Liz. She's a Minotaur. He saw he was about to get yelled at again and forced more words out of his mouth. She doesn't want to have babies. Not yet, anyway. She wants to fight for the Empire. They seemed very interested in that, but Dresden worried he was getting his friend in trouble. What would they think of him telling them all this? He didn't have very many friends to spare. Loose lips, he chastised himself, and it took over an hour for the trio to get him going again. After that, it was another hour just talking about Droplag's close call with the sand rash. It was all pointless, Dresden thought. They circled constantly back to the same things over and over again. Ralph, the Jungo, the ants, Demi, Donald. Then they went back to Ralph and all over again. Past midnight, Aerith gave the dwarf one last long glare. Now, what's your relationship with Leith Shantha? Seriously, guys, she's cute. I don't even think she knows my name. I'm just her brother's friend. Waste of time. Put him down as incomplete. Somebody else can deal with him later, the monkey snarled. You'll be seeing the Inquisitors again and again, little warlock. That's it for chapter 27. Now let's talk about the Inquisition. This institution was originally organized by the first chief of the Stone Clan, with the support of other leaders of the time. It was decided that travelers moving from clan center to clan center could one day become a threat to clan values. Further, spies from opposing cultures within the planar cluster could infiltrate the clans, and there had to be a system for rooting them out. These fears were not unfounded. The Laraquesh in 2051 far outmatched the Kelds in the ability to use magic. Circumstances on their home plane allowed them to start sooner by several years, and they had no cultural bias against pure mages. Further, both the Laraquesh and the Itarians are ahead of the Kelds in their ability to cross the plains without need of the gates. That was always the first mission of the Inquisition, to root out spies. The second mission, originally envisioned by the founders, was to maintain the faith within Keld lands. With so many converts coming into the society from conquered lands, it was obvious that some old beliefs would reassert themselves. Barely a month passes without word of some prole or house guard getting caught with some bauble of their original faith. Not a year passes without a cult being found out and destroyed. The last chartered mission of the Inquisition is record keeping. They ensure worthy warriors are noted and their paths to power accelerated. They make sure warriors see their chance to fight for the clans, and they recommend to the chiefs how magic and other resources are doled out to the clan's warriors. The Parncilia Church of Halloy organized the framework of bureaucracy that got things started. They were chosen because the collection of bards already had a firm grasp of the clan's up-and-coming heroes. It was only a few short years before the organization grew beyond the church and now dwarfs anything but the administrations of the larger clans. From humble beginnings inside the Stone Clan and the Eastern Alliance, by 2051, the institution has spread throughout Keld lands. The Inquisition has become an integral part of society. Most citizens are barely aware of its existence, but traveling warriors or anyone starting to get recognized as a heroic figure within the clan is going to get a visit. You would have to search a long time to find somebody who claimed to like the process, but even longer to find a viable alternative. That will wrap things up for us. I'm so glad that you chose to spend a few minutes with me today. Hit like, it helps more than you might think. Check out my selection for Kindle on Amazon. But most of all, thank you folks for coming in and giving a listen. And you all have an absolutely wonderful day.